So in this tutorial, we are going to learn how to open multiple images into one Photoshop document. We're going to resize some of the elements. We are going to change the blending modes and also learn how to use selection tools and review our crop. To do this, we're going to actually open them all in the same document at the same time. So you can do this in Lightroom by clicking on the images that you want, holding down Control. So we're going to take the mosaic, the whale, the mural, and the signs. So hold down Control, click on each individual image, and then you're going to right-click, edit in, and you're going to use the last option here. So open as layers in Photoshop. This is going to launch Photoshop, and it is going to take a minute to load. You'll see that in the layers panel, it's doing this automation where it's opening all individual images together as layers. Once it's done, you'll see your 4 images, and we're going to click down. So we'll see our mural, the sign, mosaic, and the whale. Because some are vertical and some are landscape, we're going to have this checkerboard. The checkerboard is just showing you transparency, meaning that there's no information there and it's see-through. If you saved these out as a JPEG, you'd end up just with a white background. So I clicked and dragged my mouse down, and then I could bring visibility back. So layer order is important. So whichever image is on top is the one you're going to see on top. So we're going to start off by dragging the mosaic up to the top. You'll see the highlight, and then you'll let go. The other ones we're going to turn off at the moment. And I also want this to be my background photo. So what I'm going to end up doing is clicking on crop. I'm going to make sure that I clear my settings. So before we were using something else, so I just hit clear. And then I'm also going to make sure that I have delete cropped pixels unchecked. And then I'm going to size my crop, and it should snap into place. There it goes. And then I'm going to hit the check mark or double click. Next, I am going to put these images into a group. So to do this, I'm going to select all 3 of them and then hit the folder down here, and this is a group. And I am going to put the group on top of the background. The group is turned on, but the individual visibility of each layer is currently turned off. So I'm going to turn them back on. We're next going to start with the signs. Now you'll see that I can't see the whole sign because the image is too large. So what I'm going to do is get out of the crop tool and move back to the move tool, which is V on the keyboard. Next, I'm going to make sure that I have the sign layer selected, which is really important. Then I'm going to do Control T. The other way to do this is Edit, Free Transform. Then I'm going to resize my file. A couple little tips. Tip number 1 is if you want to resize it and have it shrink down to the center of the picture, you hold down the Alt key and shrink it in. And then you let go. You can also rotate it as well. What we want to do is just make sure the whole picture right now is fitting into the image. So I'm going to just make sure it fits there. And then when you're done resizing it, you have to apply the transformation by either hitting the check mark, double clicking on the image, or hitting enter on the keyboard. The next thing we're going to do is use a selection tool. So I'm going to turn off the background so you can see just our picture. We're going to go to the tool called Quick Selection, which is W on the keyboard. And you'll see right here, if that doesn't select, you can click and hold and you'll find the Quick Selection tool. Now, we could go and select by dragging our mouse through, which is fine. And we're just like adding to our selection. And then down here, we would hold down, let me zoom in. Down here, I would hold down Alt to deselect part of this because it got some of the trees. And then if it does that, you can reselect and you just kind of go back and forth until you have a good selection. So that's one way to do it. I am going to try again though, a faster way. So I'm going to do Control D. And within that tool, there's a thing called Select Subject. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you'll notice that all that work I did earlier, this is doing it kind of a lot faster. So Select Subject. Now, if there's a lot of stuff intersecting, it's going to be more challenging to select a subject. So if you have something on a plain background, that makes it a lot easier. I'm going to hold down Alt with my quick selection tool and just get rid of some of these trees. So again, I'm holding down Alt and then clicking and dragging with my mouse. And add that back in. Click and drag. So holding down Alt while I do this, it turns my mouse into a minus. And if you need to resize the brush, you can do that here or using your other brush tools. Again, Alt, click and drag. And then if I need to add that back, I can just paint over it without the Alt. And Alt. You can also just click and drag. That looks pretty good. All right. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to Control 0 to zoom out. And now we are going to use a layer mask. What this is going to cut out our object without deleting the information. So I'm going to hit the layer mask, which is right here. So I'm making sure I'm selected on that layer mask. And you're going to get a mask. The mask, anything that's black is hidden, anything that is white is showing. So now I'm going to zoom in, just make sure it looks pretty good. You're seeing that we have a couple little areas of blue. So what we're going to do is we're going to select and mask. Click on this and you'll get into this menu. Here we want to have the overlay view so that we can see our image, and then anything that's red is masked out. And then I'm going to select the second brush down and I'm going to paint over the edges, and it should just refine the edge. So you notice that it's like cutting out pretty good. If I want to add that back, maybe I paint over that. Here's a little blue, I'm just going to paint over that. And I'm just scrolling down. You could also pan. You can paint over that. Paint in this little wedge. Click here. Paint over this. Click here. Pan over, and then I can try and do this edge. This edge is looking a little hard. All right, and right here. All right, so here it doesn't look that great, but we can also use a couple more tools once we get back. All right. So now we're going to go ahead. You can also smooth the edges a little bit. So sometimes you can adjust things to make them look better. You could feather it if you want it to be a little softer. And sometimes that helps just kind of blend it in a little more. So now I'm going to hit OK. And this should have adjusted and it looks a lot better. Let's do Control-0. And now I'm going to turn back the background. So in a little bit, we're going to actually put this behind the building. We're going to do the same for the whale. So let me turn that off. Let me turn that off. Turn the whale on. And zoom out. Let's move this here. So this one, again, you can Control-T. You'll see the edges. I'm going to drag it down by clicking on the middle. I'm going to hold Alt to shrink it down. And then hit Enter. And then this one is going to be more difficult to cut out because we have similar values behind it. So the edge gets a little lost, but let's see what we can do. So let's go ahead and hit Quick Selection. We're going to hit Select Subject. And it did a pretty good initial job. Now I'm going to take that tool, I'm going to hold down Alt and deselect. The bottom part honestly doesn't matter because we're going to hide it behind the building, so it's not that big of a deal. And then at the top is a part that we want to get good. I'm going to just deselect the stuff I definitely don't want. And then I'm going to come back and refine it. So here we go. So now I'm going to zoom in a little more so I can see more of what I'm doing. Now I'm going to add these tiles back in. And then I'm going to Alt and deselect the stuff I don't want. Add the tiles back in. Deselect the stuff I don't want. And sometimes it jumps. Like sometimes it thinks it knows what you want selected. And sometimes Photoshop is wrong, guys. Sometimes Photoshop is wrong. All right, go. Bada bing. Doing our best here. This is a tricky one. Ideally, it would have a more simple background, but there's nothing I could get that was more simple. I tried a couple angles. And we can always go back in and refine the edges as well. All right, let's see. Deselect. All right, I think we're getting as close as we're going to get here. So next, we're going to, again, add a layer mask. So here we're going to click, make sure the layer is selected. We're going to hit Layer Mask. That's going to cut it out. There are some weird things happening. I'm going to click on the mask. And because anything that's hidden is black and anything white is what we want to show, what we can do is take a paintbrush, B on the keyboard, and you have default black and white. So we're going to hit the little default black and white in the corner. That'll make pure black and pure white. I want to paint this back in. Something weird happened. It looks like there's a crack in my mask. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint with white. And I can actually paint back in some of these edges that came out a little wonky. I'm going to spacebar in here. And I'm using a brush. It's 50 with a 77% hardness. I just want it to look decent. Now we're clearly zoomed in a bit, but in your final one, you won't be quite as zoomed in. So some of these little details might not be as apparent. Control-0, let's zoom out. And then that actually looks pretty good. So let's turn this back on. All right, so we have our two elements. Now what we want to do is actually put them behind our building. So the last step is we are going to put a mask on the group so that the sky, which is going to be blended with this mural, and these are all behind the building. So what we're going to do is turn our elements off. We can condense the group, and then we're going to go back to the background photo. Next, we're going to make sure we're in our selection tool. We're going to go to select, and we're going to go to sky. We're going to see how well our computer can select the sky. Now it can be tricky because the mosaic is blue, so it might be confusing the sky with the blue building. So we're going to go back in here with our quick selection tool and just refine a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in and pan around. So I want to only have the sky selected. So I'm going to hold down our Alt key and deselect part of this building here. I'm going to try and get this edge. So again, I'm deselecting this part because we only want the sky selected. A little tricky. And we can go back with the paintbrush later to refine it like we did with the last one. Alt. Spacebar command. Alt. Spacebar command and Alt over here. We want that selected, so I just then Alt select to deselect the building. Alt select to deselect the building. All right. Alt select down here. All right, I think we're pretty good. Last part here. 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 Oop, I'm missing part of this. Alt. 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 All right. So then now what we're going to do is instead of adding a mask to this layer, oops. Instead of adding a mask to this layer, we're going to add the mask of the sky selection to the group. So then what we're going to do is click on group 1 and then we hit layer mask. Now immediately it doesn't do anything, but now if we turn on our other layers, they're cut out to the building. So step 1, we're going to go ahead and take the mural, put it at the bottom underneath those two objects, but still in the group. So if we close up the group, you'll see it is still in the group. And what we're going to do is you can move it around using the move tool, figure out like what part of the mural you want to include. Then I'm going to also change our blending mode. So I want you to select a blending mode that you think looks good. You can use this in combination with opacity. So I actually think multiply looks good. Probably the most common blending modes are multiply, screen, and overlay. So I'll select one of those, and then what you can do is take the opacity, and if you don't want it to be as vibrant, you can turn the opacity down. The last step is we're going to just adjust these and add them to the building, make a little image. So you can click on individual images. For this one, I want you to go ahead and rotate it. So you're going to do Control T. And then if you use the corners of the bounding box, we call this, you can resize and you can also tilt the angle. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And I'm going to do the same with the whale. If I click on it, I have auto select on, it'll select it. I'm going to do Control T, rotate, you can resize so you have a good placement for it, and hit enter. So from this tutorial, you should have made a mask on the group, masked out both of the objects, taken the mural and added a blending mode, maybe change the opacity, and use this as a background layer. At this point, you can go ahead and hit File and Save. And you can see the save status here. And then you should be able to click on Lightroom and you'll see the original files and then your edited version. Here to reopen it, what you can do, I'll just close out. In the future, to reopen this file, you're going to right click, edit in Photoshop, and edit original because it already has all the layers. You just want to be able to edit the file with the layers in it. And then here you go. You'll see all your layers. All right. If you have questions, go ahead, raise your hand. Sometimes you may need to pause and rewatch things, but you learned layer masks, free transform, blending modes, cropping, making layer masks on a group, how to create a group, and layer order. Good job. See you later.